Welcome to On Roads Less Travelled. In this video we're travelling along Googs Track, which is in South Australia. You can see it there on the map. We're just at the start of Googs Track. It's heading west. It's about 5 kilometres out of Ceduna on the right hand side. It's easy to miss the turn off because it's not labelled as Googs Track, but as soon as you take the turn there's an information board that gives you lots of information about Googs Track itself. The track was made by a family at Lone Pine. It's named Googs Track after a fellow by the name of John Denton, who pushed the track through using graders, and his whole family helped out. It took them 3 years. The reason it's called Googs Track is John Denton used to sell eggs, so I suppose it's Googs Track, but we tend to call it Googs Track. Greg's letting the tyres down in readiness for the sand hills. The first stop will be an area that's a memorial to John Denton. Greg's just put on the sand flag, which is needed whenever you're doing sand, driving through sand dunes, so that approaching vehicles can see. Greg's just tuned the CB radio to station 18, which is the station that they say for all vehicles to use on Googs Track. So here's a gate at the entrance of Googs Track. We've got our tyres set to 15 psi. And there's a photo of Goog himself, or Goog if you want to call him that. This just gives some information about the track and how popular it is for four-wheel drive enthusiasts. And we're now officially on the beginning of Googs Track. The first part is quite easy until you get to the Salt Lake, or Googs Lake, and then the sand hills get progressively worse. And Greg says they're even worse after Mount Fink, is that right?
Yeah, I do recall some pretty bad ones there.
So as you start you might think it's pretty easy, but it does get harder as you progress. The park itself is closed over the summer months because of extreme heat. So a good time to come to Googs Track is September, which it is now, where there's mild. This is the dingo fence that you pass through as you're going into Googs Track. Just after the dingo gate, it has all of this information about emergency contacts and whether your vehicle's suitable as a pre-check, keeping the public safe. Gas fires only from the 1st of November to the 15th of April, and there it's saying with UHF channel 18. This part of the track is quite dug up, as you can see. Very good reason not to bring vans along Googs Track. We would have struggled with the van there if that was there last time, wouldn't we? Wouldn't have got through. Periodically Greg will give a call out on the CB radio at the highest points to give the broadest broadcast.
Single vehicle heading north.
And this just alerts other vehicles that there's someone heading northwards along the track. This is typical of the scrubland along Googs Track. Just waiting for a couple of vehicles to pass. They were a bit unexpected, came upon them on the crest of a small dune. There are lots of other little tracks that lead off from the main track along Googs Track. We haven't explored them, and they're not They don't come up on the sat nav. This is spinifex grass. Typically it dies off in the centre as this one has. We've just stopped to collect some wood for tonight's fire. Collecting wood as you go along is a great idea because campsites are generally completely cleared out of wood. Everybody else has been there before you and used it up. This is the Denton family memorial. Tells you all about the story of Googs Track and Googs Lake. And just beside this is a money tree that people have been sticking money into this tree for decades. When we were here last in 2019, we placed, where is it? That one right there. And I see that it's still here. All the way, there's all nationality of coins as well, not just Australian coins. Greg says he's just signed the visitor's book for us. These are all coins. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coins. Quite a lot more here than when we were here last. This tells you about the money tree. Pause to read. There's a visitor's book that you can sign in there, which Greg is in. And next stop is Googs Lake, which is 4 kilometres. Then we'll come back here tomorrow morning and head the 78 towards Mount Fink. The memorial is approximately 50 kilometres from the first gate you go through and 45 from the Dingo Gate. There's Googs Lake ahead of us. The campground just has basic facilities of drop toilets and there's a couple of picnic benches and tables. And that's the one that we camped at last time and we'll probably use again. Gives us a beautiful view of the lake itself. This is one of the 2 campsites along Googs Track. Sites are not allocated, but you do have to pay in advance for both the Googs Lake site and the Mount Fink site, which are the two designated camping areas. Some people do camp in the scrub, but they prefer that you camp in the allocated campgrounds. There's no water here. There's no fuel along Googs Track at all. Glendambo to the north might be the closest and Ceduna to the south. So ensure that you bring plenty of fuel and plenty of water because there's no water available either. This is like a desert region. You can hear Greg in the background cutting up some wood, getting it ready for a fire so we can cook some lunch. You can see some pig face here. The pink flowers are pig face. Very dainty variety of pig face. I'm walking on the surface of Googs Lake, which is a salt lake, so it's dry and just has a crust of salt on the surface, very thin. It's quite deceptive. It looks like there's water at the end there, but it is only a mirage. Although there's evidence of vehicles driving down and onto the lake, It's not advised. When we were here last, we saw tyre marks where obviously someone had got terribly badly bogged and struggled to get out of it. It's just a thin crust and then soft mud underneath, so very dangerous to drive on. And they certainly don't want you to drive onto the lake surface. Tempting as it may be. A beautiful example of a sculpture made by nature. A spot of bother that somebody got into when driving on the lake. Long past now. Another sculpture created by nature. Our campsite is way around the other side of that bend and a couple more. This lake is really vast. I'd love to walk around it, but wow, it'd take a full day, I think. The sides of Googs Lake are quite steep, as you can see. Tiny little daisies eking out an existence. I've just walked around the other side of Googs Track. See that little glint there behind the edge of the dark bit? That's our campsite. Walking directly back to the campsite, that glinting light is the Gladiator Jeep. This is a lump of salt crystal.
Supporting lives and saving lives. And given that these sort of results, that we would expect that when it's rolled out across Australia, across 50.
Sunrise across Googs Lake. We're leaving Googs Lake and heading towards Mount Fink today, which is the second campsite. The sandhills should get bigger and longer as we get closer to Mount Fink.
Let's try with it. vehicle heading north.
We're finding that a lot of the ascents of the sand dunes have mini Humpty Doos, so you have to take it very slowly so it's not too rough a ride.
So further north we're going, the softer the sand appears to be. We're about 30 kilometres north of the memorial. We're currently running 15 psi, which seems to be working fine. Don't think I'll need to go any lower. Switched from high range down to low. Not that it's been that hard going, but just to see if it makes any difference on fuel usage.
And what was our current fuel usage at the moment?
So it's 21 at the moment. And that's probably telling because of the softer sand.
We're finding the tops of the dunes have quite soft sand and it's firmer in the lower parts between the dunes. You can see what I was referring to about the mini Humpty Doos. It's like bits are scalloped out as you go along, so you have to travel quite slowly up them. Also, another reason why towing a van is difficult. We did that back in 2019 and we made it through okay, but it was tough going on some of the taller, more dug up dunes. The track's a series of smaller dunes interspersed with big, large dunes. What are you averaging?
About 20 km an hour.
So we're averaging about 20 kilometres an hour.
And using 20 litres per 100.
Petrol, that is, not diesel. Some of the dunes that we're crossing have this little S-bend configuration towards the top of the dunes, which might be a bit challenging if you're travelling at speed.
we've been looking at the radio thinking that's a fuel bowser.
Oh, we have to. We've just pulled up to have a look at one of these posts, and we've just realised that it's actually 90 kilometres to the end of the track. And way off into the distance, you can just see the tip of Mount Fink, which is where we're heading for tonight's stay. Slowly getting larger on the horizon line. Some parts of the track run between the dunes, so either side of this, the dunes are high and this is a flat path in between. The sign said it's 7 kilometres drive in. Mount Fink is 369 metres at its highest point. There's a trick point up the top where a visitor's book that you can sign in if you wish. Entered the campground. They're unallocated sites. This is the campground that we camped in last time. There are no facilities here at all. There's a second campsite if you continue down the little track at the end of the first campground, and we're going to have a look and see what it's like. This is the second campground. There's a picnic table. You can see this track goes up. We're going to have a look and see just where it ends up.
That's as far as it can go. Yeah.
Looks like this is just a viewing area. Just heading to the other campground now to have a look and see what's there and what it's like. tables. So a bit of a fire pit and a picnic table with a beautiful view of Fink. And we're on the road again. Oh, where is the road? Oh, there we go. We've just passed the last 10 kilometre marker. The road's been, for the last 15-20 kilometres, it's been quite badly corrugated with some rocky outcrops to negotiate around. But Greg's been able to drive in auto. This is the last part of Googs Track, and then we're back on the bitumen again. We've reached the end of Googs Track, as this little masterpiece shows us. Just before the end there is a railway line that you come across a bit suddenly, so be watchful for that. Greg's just airing up the tyres. We're back on the main road. Not the bitumen yet, but we'll get there. We might drop into a few places along the way as we head towards Glendambo, which is the nearest fuel that we know of. And then back down through Port Augusta and to Wilmington to pick up the van, and then we're heading up to Wilpena Pound. It's Desert Pea. We discovered that there was internet reception at the top of the viewing area. We also noticed that there was a little bit of reception on some of the taller sand dunes along the way. Thank you for joining us on Roads Less Travelled. Next, we're off to explore Wilpena Pound.